Greetings from the apocalypse. So this week in the studio, we were fooling around a bit with reticulation. Reticulation is a technique to try to get your metal. It'll give you sort of hills and valleys. It gives you sort of this molten effect, and it can be really beautiful. It's a technique that is kind of random in the sense that most techniques, you learn how to do them, you can execute them, and you can get them to look exactly the way you want. Reticulation is definitely a lot more like each one will be a little different and you can vary your technique a little bit, but you never really know what you're going to get. But it can be really fun because it can give you these really interesting textures and you can make something really like fast and satisfying in a short amount of time. And I don't know about you guys, but I spend a huge amount of time in the studio, and the work that I do, it tends to be pretty OCD, but every now and then it's just fun to do something that's just kind of like fast and satisfying, which jewelry making doesn't really tend to be super fast and satisfying, so sometimes you kind of need that. So I'll be showing you today some of our experiments, and I'll keep showing you. Tevel has this particular alloy of reticulation metal. It's somewhat similar to sterling silver, but it has a lot more copper in it. And what it is the interior alloy inside has a lot more copper in it, which makes it more volatile, makes it more molten. But the surface is much more pure because it's the difference between that sort of like more molten core and the more solid outside when it gets hot that gives you all of those like textures and ridges and all that kind of fun stuff. So there's a lot of different kinds of it out on the market, and some is better than others. Tevel's is basically made by a company that designed it according to Hecky specifications, which we'll talk later about if you don't know who that is. Very famous metalsmith. So I'm just going to show you now some of the experiments we did in the studio. There'll be more coming, but I just thought I'd show you some of the different methods and the different ways that you could go about, getting this really fun effect on your metal. Okay, so we're going to do a trial run. This is some of Tevel's fabulous reticulation silver, which basically has a higher copper content on the metal that's on the inside, and then the outside layer is more pure, so you get differences in the melting point, which helps you get all those like fun nooks and crannies and crags. And I read about using some steel to create hot and cold spots so that you can get more texture. So I don't know if that's true and how well it works, so we're about to find out. So I'm going to start heating up the piece. Now, how reticulation is quote unquote supposed to be done is that you're never really supposed to get the top layer truly liquid. You're supposed to let it just soften and the metal underneath melts, and that's how you get those fun textures. Of course, the other one I melted holes in it because I thought that looked cool, but So you see what starts to happen? How you start to get funky stuff happening there and some fun texture. And there's a lot of experimentation to be done about like how hot do you get it? How close do you get your torch?
Torch tip.
Yes, exactly. So I tend to be like roast it into oblivion to see what it'll put up with, because that is my experimenting technique. And then I'm going to go down from the other end. Yeah, so I'm kind of testing the theory that it's kind of good to do sort of hot and cold spots so that you can get more of a texture. So I'm going to do one with the screws and one without the screws and see if I can, I don't know, if I can see if there's any difference. Mm-hmm. But, getting the reticulation silver kind of helps, but you can also just take sterling silver and enrich it, where you're basically getting kind of almost the same thing. But this is the stuff that was designed by Hecky.
Who's technique that by?
Very famous silversmith, and he's the one that learned it from the Fabergé people and then sort of spread it around again. He's since passed away, but so he's sort of the modern father of reticulation. I mean, reticulation is a very loosey-goosey technique, if you know what I mean. If my hands were free, I would make air quotes, because it's not super controllable. You know, you kind of like do it and you get what you get.
It looks like it's going to result in some of my mistakes. It'll look like exactly like my mistakes.
Because basically it is a hopefully semi-controlled melt. I mean, that's what you're trying to do, is get these interesting little crags and textures and highs and lows. You're really not supposed to get the surface liquid, which I just did.
And did you make that length a particular length for a ring, or just to...
Probably for a ring, but normally when you're doing reticulation, you don't cut the exact shape because you never really know exactly what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So normally you're doing it on a bigger piece, and then you would saw out, you know, the good bits. So it is a fun technique when you just want to like screw around, which is one of my more favorite things to do with the torch. But you see what's happening, how we're getting all these like, and you'll see the texture a lot more, of course, once I pickle it and use a brass brush on it. But you see all the stuff you get happening there?
Mountain ranges.
Exactly right.
Topographical.
Yes, exactly. Which, like I said, legally, I'm not supposed to be getting that top surface liquid, but here I go. I have to see how much it'll put up with. And that's how I got the holes in the other one, because I wanted a little negative space. So I burned holes in it, which is fun.
And then did you file away, or that's how the holes burned?
No, that's how the holes burned.
Super cool.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop, I'm going to pickle it, and I'll do a little brass brushing so that you can really see the texture. But this is just kind of fun to do. And you know, the more you hold the torch in one spot, the more that you're going to get to happen. Okay, so I'm going to let it cool. I'm going to pickle it. We'll scrub it a little bit so you can kind of see what the texture looks like. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I like that. Once it gets kind of dark like that, it's a little hard to see what's happening. But so I'll show it to you after it's cleaned up. You see if you like it or not. Okay, now since I overheated mine, you can see some of the more coppery silver has risen to the surface. That is contraindicated. That's not really how much you're supposed to melt it, but you know, I always have to push things to see, you know. So ideally yours won't have that on there. But what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to take this brass brush. This is one of the German ones from Tevel, which is bizarrely amazing, because you look at it and you think like, it's a stupid brass brush, who cares? The finish it'll make on this is amazing, and you'll be able to really see the texture a lot better. Okay, so we're going to go over to the sink. When you're using a brass brush, you always want to use a drop or two of Dawn on it. It helps to lubricate it and for it to move around. It also keeps any of the brass from depositing on your silver, because brass is a relatively soft metal. So in theory, if you didn't use the Dawn, you might every now and then get like a little brassy colored streak. I mean, I don't think it would like ruin your piece, but that's the principle behind it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go over to our crappy looking sink. So you see what I mean? I'll just put like a drop or two on there. Okay, a little water. And the great thing that I love about these brushes also is that, you know, so much of sanding is like you have to sand in one direction, or you have to do this, you have to do that. You have to do nothing with this. It doesn't matter what direction you go in. If you go in circles back and forth, it will almost instantly give you this beautiful sheen. So little things in jewelry are like that. You see what I mean?
Yep.
That was like, 15 seconds of scrubbing and you get that beautiful glow. And honestly, this is a great finish for this. This is literally all you have to do. It takes just hardly any time. So here, you can just watch me doing it. You could also put it down on a piece of paper, but usually I just kind of hold it in my hand. And you see what I mean? So you can see, hopefully you can see, those beautiful textures and that nice sheen that it gives it. Do a little bit more.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you
So
flip it to the other side to compare the... Yeah, so that's what it started.
that's what it started out as. And like I said, you really shouldn't be having all that copper at the surface, but I got a little excited. But you see how it'll bring out, you'll really see all that beautiful texture. Because when you first do it and it's all dull and black, it can be very hard to see, like, it's definitely not very thrilling looking. But once you kind of do this, then it really comes to life. Now, a strip like this, you could literally take this now with a leather mallet, whack it around a ring mandrel, and just have a ring. You know what I mean? It doesn't really take that much. But if you had a more specific plan, after you have this, you could like saw out sections, you could file into it, you can like hammer the sides, you can do all kinds of things to modify it. But this is just like a really fast and easy way to get an interesting texture, and a great way also to just make yourself a ring in like practically no time, which jewelry making is not really that way normally. So that's it.